The blue lights of the Zephyrian patrol ships cut through the darkness of space like deadly stars. 3 massive vessels moved in perfect formation toward the small, human ship that drifted near the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Inside the lead ship, Commander Vexthal studied the readings on his screen with cold satisfaction. "Another primitive scout," he said to his tactical officer. "These humans never learn. They keep sending their weak ships into our territory." The tactical officer nodded. "Shall we destroy it, Commander?" "It would be quick." Vexthal's orange eyes glowed with interest. "No, I want to capture this one alive. The Empire needs more information about human weaknesses. Take it intact." The small human vessel was barely the size of a Zephyrian shuttle. Its metal hull showed signs of wear and battle damage from previous fights. Strange markings covered its side, including symbols the Zephyrians had never seen before. Inside the ship, Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez checked his weapons one last time. Rodriguez was not a typical human prisoner. He stood 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and arms marked by old scars. His dark hair was cut short in military style, and his brown eyes held the steady look of a man who had seen many battles. Most importantly, the patch on his uniform showed the eagle, globe, an anchor of the United States Marine Corps. "Wow, this is going to be interesting," Rodriguez said to himself as the enemy ships surrounded him. He had been on a long-range patrol when his ship's engine failed. Now he was trapped with no way to run. The Zephyrians fired special nets of energy that wrapped around his ship like glowing chains. Rodriguez felt his vessel shake as the alien tractor beams pulled him toward their largest ship. He could have activated his ship's self-destruct system, but he had a different plan. Information was valuable, and he might learn something useful about the enemy. The Zephyrian ship's docking bay was huge and sterile. White lights reflected off smooth metal walls that had no decoration or warmth. Dozens of alien soldiers waited for Rodriguez's ship to land. They wore dark armor that covered their tall, thin bodies. Their faces were hidden behind masks with glowing red eyepieces. Rodriguez's ship touched down with a soft thud. He took a deep breath and prepared himself. Through his small window, he could see at least 20 enemy soldiers pointing weapons at his ship. Each weapon looked advanced and deadly. The aliens moved with confidence, like they had done this many times before. "Time to introduce myself," Rodriguez said quietly. The airlock hissed open. Rodriguez stepped out slowly with his hands visible, but not raised. He wore standard Marine combat gear with body armor and utility belt. His rifle hung on his back, and a pistol rested in its holster. To the Zephyrians, his equipment looked primitive and crude. "Surrender your weapons, human," ordered the lead Zephyrian in broken English. His voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. Rodriguez studied the alien for a moment. The creature was 7 feet tall with gray skin and long fingers that ended in sharp claws. Its armor looked expensive, but had weak points at the joints. The weapon it carried was probably energy-based, judging by the glowing power cell. "Name, rank, and serial number," Rodriguez said calmly. "That's all you're getting." The Zephyrians looked confused. They had expected fear or begging. Instead, this human stood straight and calm, like he was in control of the situation. Several aliens shifted nervously, tightening their grip on their weapons. "You will give us your weapons now," the leader repeated, stepping closer. Rodriguez smiled slightly. "Come and take them." What happened next surprised everyone. When the lead Zephyrian reached for Rodriguez's rifle, the Marine moved faster than the aliens thought possible. Rodriguez grabbed the alien's wrist, twisted hard, and used the creature's own weight to flip it to the ground. The alien's weapon flew away and clattered across the metal floor. Before the other aliens could react, Rodriguez had drawn his pistol and fired 3 precise shots. The bullets struck the energy weapons of nearby soldiers, destroying them in small explosions of sparks. Then Rodriguez dropped low as return fire filled the air above his head. The Zephyrians had expected an easy capture. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy who moved like liquid death. Rodriguez rolled behind his ship and used it for cover. His rifle appeared in his hands like magic, and he began picking off targets with impossible accuracy. "How is this possible?" shouted a Zephyrian officer. Intelligence said humans were weak. Rodriguez's bullets found gaps in alien armor that seemed impossibly small. Each shot was placed with surgical precision, disabling weapons and wounding attackers without killing them. He moved position constantly, never staying in one place long enough for return fire to find him. The battle lasted only 3 minutes. When it ended, Rodriguez stood surrounded by disabled enemies and broken weapons. He had not killed any of the aliens, but he had shown them something they had not expected. Humans could fight. More Zephyrian soldiers poured into the docking bay, too many for Rodriguez to handle. He set down his weapons slowly, but his eyes never stopped moving. He was memorizing faces, counting soldiers, and noting security procedures. Every detail went into his memory for later use. "Impossible," whispered Commander Vexthal as he watched the security footage. "Our intelligence said humans were peaceful farmers and miners." Rodriguez allowed himself to be restrained with energy shackles. The aliens were rough but careful, clearly having gained respect for their prisoners' abilities. As they led him through the ship's corridors, Rodriguez noted camera positions, guard posts, and emergency exits. The holding cell was small and bare. 3 metal walls surrounded a simple bench with a thin blanket. The 4th wall was transparent energy that hummed softly. Rodriguez sat down calmly and waited. Outside his cell, Zephyrian guards whispered among themselves. They had never seen a prisoner who seemed so relaxed after being captured. Most species begged or cried. This human just sat quietly, like he was waiting for something. Rodriguez smiled to himself as he listened to the aliens talk. They were scared, even if they tried to hide it. Good. Fear made enemies make mistakes. And Rodriguez was very good at taking advantage of mistakes. The war was just beginning, and the Zephyrians had made their first error. They had captured a United States Marine, and Marines never gave up. They never left their people behind, and they always found a way to complete their mission. Rodriguez closed his eyes and began planning. The aliens thought they had won by capturing him. Soon, they would learn how wrong they were. The interrogation room was designed to break spirits. Cold metal walls reflected harsh white lights that never dimmed. The air was too hot and smelled of fear from countless prisoners who had suffered here before. Commander Vestal sat across from Rodriguez at a table made of black stone. Between them lay various devices that hummed with threatening energy. Rodriguez had been in the prison for 3 days. He looked exactly the same as when they had captured him. His uniform was still neat, his posture still straight, and his dark eyes still held that calm confidence that made his guards nervous. "Let us begin again," Vexthal said in his metallic voice. "Tell us about human military positions in this sector." Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps. Rodriguez replied in the same steady tone he had used every time. Service number 2847936548821. Vexthal's orange eyes flashed with anger. He had broken prisoners from 12 different species using his methods. Strong warriors had begged for mercy after just 1 session. This human was different, and it frustrated him greatly. "You do not understand your situation," the alien commander said. "We have devices that can cause pain beyond your imagination. Your primitive nervous system cannot resist our technology." Rodriguez leaned back slightly in his chair. "Is that what you told the Centauri prisoners before they broke out and destroyed your base on Kepler 7? The interrogation room fell silent. Vexthal's face went pale gray. That information was classified at the highest levels. How could this human possibly know about it? "You are bluffing," Vextil said, but his voice shook slightly. Rodriguez smiled. "Am I? What about the supply convoy you lost last month near the Vega system? 12 ships full of weapons. Just gone. Made your superiors pretty angry, I bet." The truth was that Rodriguez knew nothing about these events. But he understood psychology, and he could read body language. The way Vextil's claws tapped nervously on the table told him everything he needed to know. The Zephyrian Empire was having more problems than they wanted to admit. Vextil activated one of his torture devices. Energy crackled between two metal rods, creating a sound like angry insects. "This will change your mind about cooperation." The device sent waves of pain through Rodriguez's body. It felt like being struck by lightning while having every muscle cramp at once. Most beings would scream and beg for mercy within seconds. Rodriguez gritted his teeth and endured it. He had survived worse training exercises in Marine Boot Camp. When Vextil finally turned off the device, Rodriguez was breathing hard, but still upright. "That's it?" he said. "My drill instructor was tougher than that." The alien commander stared in disbelief. He increased the power and tried again. Rodriguez's body shook with agony, but he did not cry out. Instead, he began to hum an old Marine cadence song. The simple melody echoed off the metal walls, defiant and strong. Hours passed. Vextil tried every torture method he knew. Pain inducers, memory scramblers, fear projectors, and sensory overload machines. Each time, Rodriguez endured the torture without breaking. Sometimes he even made jokes. "You know," Rodriguez said after a particularly unpleasant session with sonic torture, "my ex-wife was louder than that thing." The guards outside the interrogation room began to whisper among themselves. Word spread through the prison ship about the human who could not be broken. Some aliens claimed he was not really human at all, but some kind of war machine built to look like a person. During mealtimes, Rodriguez was placed in a common area with other prisoners. The aliens thought this would demoralize him by showing him other broken captives. Instead, Rodriguez began to study his fellow prisoners and learn about them. There was Keth, a reptilian draconian who had been captured 6 months ago. His green scales were dull from poor nutrition, and his yellow eyes held no hope. Nearby sat Zara, a blue-skinned Aquarian whose gills fluttered weakly. She had stopped eating and would probably die soon. Rodriguez sat down next to them during his second week in prison. "How long have you folks been here?" Keth looked at him with surprise. "You speak to us?" "Most new prisoners avoid contact. It makes the guards angry. Where I come from, we don't abandon our fellow soldiers," Rodriguez said quietly, "even if they're not human." Over the following days, Rodriguez began to share stories with the other prisoners. He told them about Earth, about human history, and about something called hope. He spoke carefully, knowing the guards were listening, but his words carried hidden meanings. "Back on my world, we had this thing called the Underground Railroad," he said during one meal. "People helping other people find freedom, even when it seemed impossible." Zara lifted her head for the first time in weeks. "Freedom? What is this word?" Rodriguez smiled. "It's what happens when good people refuse to give up." The other prisoners began to sit closer to Rodriguez during meals. They started eating more and talking among themselves. Even the guards noticed the change in mood, but they did not understand what was happening. Meanwhile, Rodriguez continued his own observations. He counted guard shifts, memorized patrol routes. He noted which aliens were cruel and which ones seemed reluctant to hurt prisoners. He learned about the ship's layout by listening to conversations and watching the movement of personnel. Most importantly, he began to understand Zephyrian psychology. They valued order and efficiency above all else. They feared chaos and unpredictability. Their entire military system was built on the idea that superior technology would always defeat inferior enemies. That was their weakness. They had never faced an enemy who could adapt and improvise like humans could. During his third week of captivity, Rodriguez was called back to the interrogation room. Vexthel looked tired and frustrated. Dark circles surrounded his orange eyes, and his normally perfect uniform was wrinkled. "You are a puzzle I cannot solve," the alien commander admitted. "My superiors are beginning to question my abilities." "Perhaps you really are just a stubborn fool." Rodriguez studied his captor carefully. "Tell me something, Vexthel. How many human prisoners have you interrogated before me?" "You are the first combat prisoner," the alien replied. "Previous humans were civilians. Farmers, miners, scientists. They broke easily." "That's your first mistake," Rodriguez said. "You assumed all humans are the same." Vexthel leaned forward with interest despite himself. "Explain." Rodriguez shook his head. "Name, rank, and serial number. But I'll give you some free advice. Check your intelligence files more carefully. You might learn something interesting about the planet Earth." As guards escorted him back to his cell, Rodriguez felt satisfied. He had planted a seed of doubt in Vexthel's mind. Soon, the alien would go looking for more information about humans. And what he found would change everything. The other prisoners watched. Rodriguez returned with something they had almost forgotten: hope. The human had shown them that their captors were not all-powerful. Perhaps escape was not impossible after all. Rodriguez settled down on his bench and began planning the next phase of his mission. The Zephyrians thought they were interrogating him. In reality, he was interrogating them, and he was learning exactly what he needed to know. The prison transport corridor stretched for 200 meters through the heart of the Zephyrian ship. Heavy blast doors sealed each section, and security cameras watched every angle. Energy fields hummed in the walls, ready to stun any prisoner who tried to escape. It was considered the most secure pathway in the entire facility. Rodriguez walked calmly between 4 heavily armed guards. Energy shackles bound his hands behind his back, and a neural dampener collar around his neck was supposed to slow his reflexes. He was being moved to a new cell in maximum security after Vexthel decided. He was too dangerous for the general population. The Marine had spent 3 weeks studying this corridor during his trips to interrogation. He knew exactly where each camera was positioned and how long it took guards to respond to alarms. More importantly, he had been watching his escorts and learning their weaknesses. Guard Captain Zixtar led the group. He was typical Zephyrian military, tall and proud, convinced of his own superiority. Behind Rodriguez walked 3 more soldiers, each carrying weapons that could kill most beings instantly. They felt completely safe. They were about to learn why feeling safe around a United States Marine was a serious mistake. "Stop," Zixtar commanded as they reached the checkpoint halfway through the corridor. He needed to scan his identification card to open the next blast door. This was the moment Rodriguez had been waiting for. As Zixtar turned toward the scanner, Rodriguez moved. The neural dampener was designed to slow alien reflexes, but human nervous systems were different. Rodriguez had been fighting the device's effects for days, building up resistance. Now he moved with the speed and precision of a trained killer. His bound hands came up and over his head, in a move that looked impossible. The energy shackles, weakened by subtle tampering over several days, snapped apart. Before the first guard could even shout a warning, Rodriguez had grabbed Zixtar's weapon and spun the alien around as a shield. "Impossible!" shouted one of the guards. "The shackles cannot break." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Marine Corps engineering. We're good at breaking things." The truth was simpler, but just as impressive. Rodriguez had been slowly working the shackles loose using techniques learned in escape and evasion training. He had also been studying the alien technology, finding design flaws that the overconfident Zephyrians had missed. Using Zixstar as cover, Rodriguez disabled the remaining guards with brutal efficiency. A pressure point strike dropped the first alien unconscious. An elbow to the knee joint crippled the second. The third guard managed to raise his weapon before Rodriguez's stolen pistol fired, destroying the alien's gun in a shower of sparks. The entire fight lasted 15 seconds. 4 elite Zephyrian soldiers lay on the floor, alive but completely defeated. Rodriguez stood over them, breathing normally, like he had just finished a light workout. Alarms began wailing throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridor as blast doors started to close automatically. Rodriguez calmly walked to the security panel and studied its design. Interesting, he said to himself. Similar to Federation technology, but with Zephyrian modifications. The aliens had made another mistake. They had assumed their technology was too advanced for a primitive human to understand. They had not considered that Rodriguez might have encountered similar systems during previous battles against other alien species. Rodriguez's fingers moved quickly across the control panel. He was not trying to escape, which confused the ship's security system. Instead, he was gathering information. Data flowed across the screen showing ship layouts, guard positions, and prisoner locations. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor as reinforcements arrived. 20 armed Zephyrians surrounded Rodriguez, weapons trained on him from every angle. He raised his hands slowly, but his dark eyes showed no fear. "Step away from the console, human," ordered the squad leader. Rodriguez complied, but not before memorizing the last screen of data. He now knew exactly how many prisoners were aboard, where they were held, and which ones were in the worst condition. More importantly, he had learned something else. The Zephyrians were not just capturing random humans. They were specifically targeting people from Earth's outer colonies, places where resistance would be minimal. But they had made a critical error in their intelligence gathering. Commander Vexthal arrived minutes later, his orange eyes bright with fury. He stared at the disabled guards and the damaged security panel, trying to understand what had happened. "Explain this," he demanded. Rodriguez shrugged. "Your boys needed some training. I was happy to help. You were restrained and monitored. This should have been impossible." "Should have been," Rodriguez agreed. "But you made some assumptions about human capabilities." "Bad assumptions." Vexthal ordered Rodriguez to be taken to an isolation cell with triple security. As the guards led him away, Rodriguez caught the eye of Keth, the draconian prisoner who was watching from behind a security barrier. The reptilian's yellow eyes widened as Rodriguez mouthed a single word. Soon, news of the corridor incident spread through the prison ship like wildfire. Guards whispered about the human who had broken unbreakable restraints and defeated 4 soldiers in seconds. Some claimed he had used magic. Others said he was some kind of super soldier. The truth was both simpler and more terrifying. Rodriguez was just a well-trained Marine who understood his enemy and environment. But to aliens who had never faced serious human resistance, his abilities seemed supernatural. In his new isolation cell, Rodriguez sat quietly and planned his next move. The Zephyrians had revealed crucial weaknesses during the corridor fight. Their technology was advanced but predictable. Their soldiers were well-equipped but poorly trained for close combat. Most importantly, they were beginning to fear him. Fear was a weapon Rodriguez understood very well. 3 levels below. In the main prisoner holding area, other captives talked in hushed voices about what they had witnessed. For the first time in months, some began to believe that escape might be possible. The human had shown them something important. Their captors were not unbeatable. Keth gathered a small group of trusted prisoners around him that evening. "The human spoke to me," he whispered. he said soon. "I think he is planning something." "What could one prisoner do against an entire ship?" asked Zara Doubtfull. An old Centauri trader named Voss answered her. "I have heard stories about humans," he said quietly. "They do not surrender easily. And this one, he is different from the others. He is a warrior." "Warriors die like anyone else," Zara replied. Voss shook his head. "Not human warriors. They have a saying on Earth: Marines never die, they just go to hell and regroup." Meanwhile, in the ship's command center, Vexthul was having a very different conversation with his security chief. The alien commander was beginning to realize that capturing Rodriguez might have been a serious mistake. "Sir," the security chief reported, "I have reviewed our intelligence files on human military capabilities. The data is very limited." "What does it say?" Vexthul demanded. "That humans have been engaged in continuous warfare for their entire recorded history. Their planet has over 200 different nations, many with their own military forces." Vexthul felt a cold chill in his blood. "And this prisoner?" "According to his uniform markings, he belongs to something called the United States Marine Corps. Our files on this organization are classified above my clearance level." The alien commander stared at his subordinate for a long moment. Then he turned to his communication console and began composing a message to Zephyrian Intelligence Command. He was beginning to suspect that they had captured much more than just a simple human soldier. They might have captured the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, an American Marine with time to plan. The emergency meeting in Commander Vexthul's quarters happened at 0300 ship time. Present was the security chief, the interrogation specialist, and the ship's intelligence officer. On the main screen, classified files from Zephyrian High Command glowed with red warning symbols. "This cannot be accurate," Vexthul said, staring at the data. "These numbers must be wrong." Intelligence Officer Kalanara shook her head grimly. "I verified the information 3 times, sir. The planet Earth has a population of 8 billion humans. Of those, approximately 50 million are active or reserve military personnel. 50 million soldiers?" The security chief whispered. "That's more than the entire population of most civilized worlds." Kalanara continued reading from the classified report. "The United States alone maintains over 2 million active military personnel across 6 service branches. The Marines are considered their elite shock troops, specializing in rapid assault and unconventional warfare." Vexthul's orange eyes dimmed with growing horror. "What else?" "Humans have been fighting wars continuously for over 5,000 years. They have weapons ranging from simple projectile firearms to thermonuclear devices capable of destroying entire planets. Most disturbing of all, they seem to enjoy combat." The room fell silent. Every Zephyrian present was thinking the same thing. They had not captured a member of a peaceful species. They had taken a professional killer from the most militarized planet in known space. "There is more, sir," Kalanara said quietly. According to intercepted human communications, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez was not on a simple patrol mission. He was conducting deep reconnaissance in preparation for something humans call Operation Liberty Storm. "What is that?" Vexthul demanded. "A coordinated rescue mission to recover human prisoners of war." "Sir, I believe we have been specifically targeted by human military forces." 3 levels below, Rodriguez was putting his own plans into motion. The isolation cell was heavily monitored, but the Marine had found ways to communicate that his captors did not understand. Tapping patterns on the walls, hand signals during meal delivery, and coded messages hidden in casual conversation. The other prisoners had begun to organize themselves into small groups. Keth led the reptilian draconians, while Zara coordinated the aquatic species. An old Centauri named Voss used his knowledge of galactic trade routes to map possible escape paths. But Rodriguez had a different plan. He was not just organizing an escape. He was preparing for war. "Listen carefully," he whispered to Kath during a brief moment when the guards were distracted. "Tonight, when the third shift takes over, we begin Phase 1. "What is Phase 1? The Draconian asked nervously. Rodriguez smiled in a way that made Kath's scales stand on end. "We introduce these aliens to human military doctrine." That night, small incidents began happening throughout the ship. Food synthesizers malfunctioned, producing meals that tasted terrible. Lighting systems flickered randomly in guard quarters. Door locks occasionally jammed, trapping personnel in rooms for hours. Each incident was minor and seemed unrelated. The ship's technical crew blamed equipment fatigue and scheduled routine maintenance. They did not realize they were experiencing the opening moves of a carefully planned campaign. Rodriguez had taught his fellow prisoners something the Zephyrians did not understand: asymmetric warfare. When facing a superior enemy, you do not attack their strengths. You target their weaknesses and destroy their ability to function normally. The second night brought escalation. Environmental controls began acting strangely. Some sections became uncomfortably hot while others grew cold. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated randomly, causing aliens to stumble and fall. Communication systems experienced mysterious interference. Captain Zixstar, still recovering from his encounter with Rodriguez in the corridor, reported the incidents to Commander Vexthal. "Sir, these cannot be coincidences. Someone is sabotaging our systems." "Impossible," Vexthal replied. "All prisoners are secured and monitored. Our own crew has been thoroughly screened." But Zixstar was not convinced. He had felt Rodriguez's strength firsthand and knew the human was far more dangerous than their files suggested. "Sir, I request permission to conduct a full security review." Vexthal was about to refuse when his communications officer burst into the room. "Commander, we have a problem. Multiple ships approaching from the outer system. They're not responding to our hails." On the main screen, sensor data showed 5 vessels moving toward their position. The ships were unfamiliar in design, sleek and angular, with weapon signatures unlike anything in Zephyrian databases. "Unknown vessels. This is Commander Vexthal of the Imperial Prison Ship Dominance. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourselves immediately." The response came in clear, unaccented Galactic Standard. "This is Colonel Sarah Mitchell, United States Marine Corps. You are holding one of our people. We want him back." The bridge fell silent. Vexthal stared at the screen as if it had grown teeth and started biting him. "How did they find us?" "Our position was classified." Intelligence Officer Kalanara checked her instruments frantically. "Sir, the human ships are using stealth technology we cannot penetrate. They could have been following us for days without detection." Meanwhile, in the prisoner sections, Rodriguez felt the subtle vibration through the ship's hull as the human vessels moved closer. He had been counting the hours since his capture, knowing that rescue would come eventually. Marines never left their own behind. "Attention, alien vessel." Colonel Mitchell's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "You have 30 minutes to prepare Staff Sergeant Rodriguez for transfer. Any harm that comes to him or the other prisoners will result in consequences you cannot imagine." Vexthal tried to maintain his composure. "This is sovereign Zephyrian space. Your presence here is an act of war." "Commander," came the cold reply, "we are already at war. You declared it when you started capturing our civilians. The only question now is whether you want to survive the next hour." The Zephyrian commander looked around his bridge at the frightened faces of his crew. These were professional soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like this. The humans had tracked them across light years of space and arrived with military precision that spoke of careful planning. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, The human ships are powering weapons. Energy signatures are off the charts. Vexthil realized he was trapped. His ship was powerful, but outnumbered 5-1 by vessels using technology his sensors could barely understand. Worse, he now knew exactly what kind of enemy he was facing. He had captured a United States Marine, and now the rest of the Marines had come to take their brother home. "Open a channel," he said quietly. "Colonel Mitchell, we are prepared to discuss terms." "No terms," came the immediate response. "Release all prisoners within 15 minutes, or we will take them by force." "Your choice, Commander." In his cell, Rodriguez smiled as he heard the familiar voice of his commanding officer. The cavalry had arrived, and the Zephyrians were about to learn why messing with American military personnel was considered a very bad idea throughout the galaxy. The real education was about to begin. Commander Vexthil stood on his bridge, watching the countdown timer reach 0. Sweat ran down his gray skin despite the cool air, and his claws tapped nervously against his command chair. 15 minutes had passed since Colonel Mitchell's ultimatum, and he had not released the prisoners. He could not. To do so would mean admitting weakness to the entire Zephyrian Empire. His superiors would execute him for cowardice. Better to fight and die with honor than surrender to primitive humans. "All weapons, prepare to fire," he commanded. "Target their lead vessel." But before his gunner could comply, every system on the bridge went dark. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the command center as backup power struggled to activate. The main computer core was offline. Weapon systems showed critical errors. Even life support was operating at minimum levels. What happened? Vexthil shouted. "Report." His technical officer was frantically checking diagnostic panels. "Sir, it appears to be a cascade failure. Multiple systems are experiencing simultaneous malfunctions." What the Zephyrians did not know was that Rodriguez had spent 5 weeks mapping their ship's internal systems. Every conversation he had overheard, every maintenance routine he had observed, every technical detail mentioned in his presence had been carefully cataloged and analyzed during the past 3 nights. While the crew blamed random equipment failures, Rodriguez had been conducting precision sabotage, using improvised tools made from meal utensils and stolen components. He had systematically weakened key systems throughout the ship. The coup de grace had come when the human fleet arrived. Rodriguez had activated a carefully planned series of overloads that crashed the ship's primary computer network. The Dominance was now effectively helpless. "Sir," his communications officer called out. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet." Colonel Mitchell's voice filled the bridge, calm and professional. "Commander Vexthil, your weapons are offline and your shields are down. This is your final opportunity to surrender peacefully." Vexthil stared at his useless control panels in growing horror. Somehow, impossibly, his ship had been crippled from within. Only one explanation made sense. "The human prisoner," he whispered. "This is his doing." Down in the detention levels, Rodriguez was implementing Phase 2 of his escape plan. The cascade failure had unlocked every cell door in the prison section. Hundreds of captives from dozens of different species were emerging into the corridors, confused but suddenly free. "Listen to me," Rodriguez shouted to get their attention. "I know you're scared, but we don't have much time. The guards will be here soon with backup power." Kath and the other prisoners who had been working with Rodriguez quickly organized the crowd. They had spent weeks preparing for this moment, turning scared captives into a coordinated resistance force. "Zara, take your people to the shuttle bay," Rodriguez commanded. "Vus, you and the Centauri secure the armory. Kath, we need to control the main corridor." The prisoners moved with surprising organization. Rodriguez had taught them basic military tactics during their secret meetings, preparing them for this exact situation. They were no longer helpless victims. They were an army. Guard Captain Zixstar led the first response team into the detention area, expecting to find chaos and confusion. Instead, he walked into a carefully planned ambush. The prisoners had turned their own prison into a fortress, using overturned tables and debris to create defensive positions. "Surrender your weapons," Rodriguez called out from behind cover. "You're outnumbered 50 to 1. Zixstar raised his energy rifle. "Never. We are Zephyrian Imperial Guards." The firefight that followed was brief and decisive. The guards were well-trained and well-equipped, but they were facing an enemy they did not understand. Rodriguez had turned frightened prisoners into motivated soldiers fighting for their freedom. More importantly, he had taught them to work together. Draconian claws tore through alien armor, while Aquarian water weapons shorted out energy rifles. Centauri traders used their knowledge of technology to disable security systems, while other species provided covering fire with stolen weapons. Within 10 minutes, the entire detention section was under prisoner control. On the bridge, Commander Vex Thul received increasingly desperate reports from throughout his ship. "Sir, the prisoners have escaped and taken control of Deck 7. They have armed themselves and are advancing toward critical systems. How many guards do we have left?" Vex Thul demanded. "Less than 30, sir. The rest are trapped behind blast doors or captured." Vex Thul's orange eyes went wide with disbelief. His ship carried over 200 crew members and guards. How had they been defeated by unarmed prisoners? The answer came from Colonel Mitchell's voice over the communication system. "Commander, you have now experienced human military doctrine firsthand. One Marine, given time and resources, can accomplish remarkable things. I suggest you consider surrender before we board your vessel." Vex Thul looked around his darkened bridge at the frightened faces of his remaining officers. Everything was falling apart. His supposedly impregnable prison ship was being conquered from within by the very prisoners it was designed to hold. "Sir," his intelligence officer said quietly, "perhaps we should consider their terms." Before Vex Thul could respond, the blast doors to the bridge exploded inward. Rodriguez stepped through the smoke and debris, flanked by armed prisoners from a dozen different species. His uniform was torn and dirty, but his dark eyes burned with fierce determination. "Game over?" he said simply. The remaining bridge crew raised their hands in surrender. They had seen enough to know the resistance was futile. This human had systematically dismantled their entire operation with nothing but intelligence, determination, and the cooperation of people they had thought were broken. Rodriguez walked to the communication console and activated the ship-wide intercom. "This is Staff Sergeant Rodriguez to all Zephyrian personnel. Your ship is now under new management. Anyone who cooperates will be treated fairly. Anyone who resists will be dealt with accordingly." He switched to the external communication channel. "Colonel Mitchell, this is Rodriguez. The ship is secured and all prisoners are safe. Permission to come aboard, ma'am." "Outstanding work, Sergeant." "Stand by for docking." As the human ships moved closer, Vex Thul finally understood the full scope of his mistake. He had not just captured a simple soldier. He had taken a United States Marine, a member of an organization that considered leaving people behind the greatest sin imaginable. More than that, he had given that Marine weeks to study his ship, understand his procedures, and plan a counterattack. The Zephyrians had been so confident in their technological superiority that they had never considered the possibility of being outmaneuvered by primitive humans. How? Vex Thul asked as Rodriguez secured the bridge. "How did you defeat us so easily?" Rodriguez looked at the alien commander with something that might have been pity. "You made a lot of mistakes," he said. "But the biggest one was thinking that advanced technology makes you better warriors. Our weapons are superior to anything humans possess," Vex Thul protested. "Maybe, Rodriguez admitted. But weapons don't win wars. People do. And you never bothered to understand what kind of people you were fighting. Colonel Mitchell and a squad of Marines boarded the Dominance 30 minutes later. Rodriguez snapped to attention as his commanding officer entered the bridge, but she waved him to ease. "Hell of a thing, Rodriguez," she said with a slight smile. 5 weeks as a prisoner of war, and you end up capturing their ship. Just following standard operating procedure, ma'am. Gather intelligence, organize resistance, and complete the mission. Colonel Mitchell nodded approvingly. And the other prisoners? All secured and ready for evacuation. We also recovered intelligence about Zephyrian prison operations and military capabilities. Excellent. The intelligence folks will want to debrief everyone thoroughly. As the freed prisoners were transferred to the human ships, Vexthal watched in amazement. These beings who had seemed broken and hopeless were now standing tall, proud to have fought for their freedom. The human had not just organized an escape. He had reminded them of their own dignity. "Commander Vexthal," Colonel Mitchell said, approaching the defeated alien. "You and your crew will be treated according to the Galactic Convention on Prisoners of War. Unlike your empire, we believe in honor." Vexthal nodded slowly. "Colonel, may I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Are all humans like him?" Vexthal gestured toward Rodriguez, who was helping injured prisoners reach the medical bay. Colonel Mitchell considered the question seriously. "Rodriguez is a good Marine, but he's not unique. Every American service member is trained to never give up, never leave anyone behind, and never stop fighting for what's right." She paused and looked directly into Vexthal's orange eyes. "Commander, your empire made a serious error in judgment. You thought Earth was populated by easy targets. Instead, you picked a fight with the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. What happens now?" Vexthal asked. "Now you get to explain to your superiors how one American Marine conquered your most secure prison ship." Colonel Mitchell replied, "And they get to decide whether the Zephyrian Empire wants to continue this war or negotiate a peaceful solution." As the human fleet departed with their rescued prisoners,